Good afternoon and welcome to What's in it for Africa. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Would you speak about energy?
Definitely.
What about economics?
Yes, for sure.
What about climate change?
Definitely.
Yes, but what's in it for Africa?
Well, you'll find out. Happy New Year and welcome to What's in it for Africa, the EU Africa update show with me, Uzobadu. This month, we're going to find out more about the EU aviation strategy, also the EU's environmental activity on the circular economy package, and what really happened between the EU and Africa at the World Trade Organization's ministerial meeting in Kenya. In December, the EU lifted off with its new aviation strategy, which seeks to reinforce its global leadership position in the aviation sector. Now, under the strategy, the EU has planned out to come to some new international agreements to improve its international connectivity with key growth markets. Now, these key growth markets include those in Asia, the Middle East and Central America, but not in Africa, despite Africa actually being one of the key growth aviation sectors over the next 20 years. And it's actually dubbed to increase annually 5%. The EU aviation strategy also wants to seek to improve fair competition. Now, to do this, it wants to look at measures to stop heavy state subsidised operators from non-EU countries, but also protect against unfair pricing practices. Now, the strategy in and of itself will now be commented on by the European Parliament and the Council, and the measures on unfair pricing practices and heavy state subsidies to protect unfair competition is penciled in for early 2016. Now, the relationship between the EU and Africa on aviation really needs to be strengthened because, as we know, over half of the banned airlines into the EU airspace, for safety reasons, are actually coming from the African continent. Now moving on to the environment, as global leaders met in December to discuss global climate change at COP21, the European Union took environmental issues into their own hands and released its circular economy package. Now what this does is it aims to reserve valuable resources by getting the maximum use out of them and essentially using them again and again. For example, metals such as aluminium, which are found in large quantities in Guinea, Mozambique and Ghana, or copper, which is mined in Zambia, South Africa and the Democratic Republic of Congo. These are all endlessly recyclable. A circular economy model would reduce Europe's impact on the climate, but would also mean they wouldn't seek to exploit these resources as often. Now, this brings back into focus the importance of Africa moving away from being an exporter of primary commodities and moving towards a better integration into the global value chain. Another legislative element of the circular economy package is that the European Union is looking at revising its waste shipment regulation in 2016. Now, this will be in order to better detect illegal shipments of waste, mainly those end-of-life vehicles. Now, as we know, deregistered vehicles, but also toxic and electronic waste, are making their way from northwestern Europe into West Africa. And when it arrives, the waste is often dumped or mismanaged. Therefore, better enforcement could encourage better waste management practices and also avoid Europeans' waste becoming Africa's problem. The World Trade Organization's ministerial conference took place in Kenya during December. Now, the European Union set to agree on the Doha round, which seeks to lower trade barriers globally. But it has been fraught with much disagreement, specifically on agriculture subsidy issues, but also because of trade remedy issues also. Now, we have the developed states like the EU, the US and Japan on one side, and the BRICS and developing states on the other. Another issue that the EU is concerned about is the speedy approval and implementation of the Trade Facilitation Agreement. Now, this agreement aims to simplify border procedures to ease the flow of goods globally. It has been approved by the EU back in October, but on the African side, only Mauritius, Togo, Botswana and Niger have done so. With regards to what the African countries want, they actually do want a conclusion of the Doha development round also. However, least developed countries such as Uganda, Rwanda and Tanzania also want to improve access for their products to rich country markets, but also improve technical assistance so that they can enter new product markets. Now, developing countries such as Kenya itself also want to be able to ensure that they can subsidise their agricultural products, but also to protect their manufacturing industries from imports. Now, the European Centre for Development Policy and Management was actually attending the Nairobi meeting, and we asked Isabel Ramdu, who's Deputy Head of its Economic Transformation and Trade Programme, what really happened at the WTO ministerial meeting and who were the winners and losers.
You know, this Doha development agenda has been going on. Negotiations have been going on to conclude this since the last 14 years. So a lot has happened since then. One of the things that has happened since then is this new trend that we see, the mega regional agreements, where rich countries, because precisely they really want to move forward with their trade, have decided, because of the slowness of the WTO, to conclude deals in parallel. If this is not successful, I think the trend of countries concluding agreements parallel to the multilateral system will continue. This is not a good news for developing countries, because none of the developing countries, in particular African countries, are part of the regional deals. So you will have an increasing disconnect between countries that have the means, have the possibility to negotiate much more ambitious deals. They will move on. And those countries that are not part of the agreement will unfortunately stay backwards. So this is really a challenge, and I think to me that's the reason why developing countries really hope to have an agreement here which is consensual and which is also based on adjusting to what developing countries need and also what developed countries want.
So that's it for this month. Thank you for watching the EU Africa Update show, and be sure to join us in 2 weeks' time for Inside the Issue, where we find out what the EU has in store for African countries in 2016. So follow us on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube and like our Facebook page. My name is Uzo Ndu for What's in It for Africa.